Welcome to the Crosscreek On Demand podcast, a podcast that is for you because God is for you. This week, we continue with part 4 of our series, How to Love Your Neighbor, and we'll discover the best way to love our neighbors is committing to being together for our neighbors.
I got 2 questions for you. Don't worry, the answer to both of them is yes. So you're safe. First question, do you want the world to be a better place? Yes, of course, right? I know they're dumb questions. Do you want your kids or your grandkids to have a bright future living in unity and peace with others? That would be amazing. Of course you do. And I have good news for you. Together, we can be part of creating the future we want to see. Together, we can be part of creating the future we want to see. And what's also amazing, it's something we can truly enjoy doing. See, we have a God who we just talked about, who loves us, who sees us, who knows us, and who actually enjoys us. And if we really want to create that future that we all just said we want to have, all we honestly have to do is enjoy Him enjoying us and invite others into that enjoyment. Like, that's pretty sweet. Like, how great would it be if all of our neighbors discovered what it actually means to enjoy God? What if our neighbors, like our actual physical neighbors who are usually either like complaining about each other, right? Or at least ignoring each other, just going into the garage and never saying hi to each other. What would happen in your neighborhood if all of them started actually enjoying God and knowing that God also enjoys their neighbor? What if your whole school and your whole school community, the teachers, the staff, the administrators, the students, enjoyed God and knew that He enjoyed them every day? What if our offices and our workplaces weren't filled with gossip and weren't filled with people just working for the weekend, but were filled with people living lives where they were actually enjoying God daily? Like, imagine how much more unity and peace we'd experience together. This whole idea of enjoying God. One like small little example how it changes your life. Liz and I, we were like praying with the kids at breakfast or something. I know we're a pastor's family, we have to do that. But the kids they can't hear me. The kids are being obnoxious, like awful, like not listening. And I was getting all worked. I'm like, we're talking about Jesus, guys, come on. And Liz just kind of rose my back lightly and she said, enjoy. Enjoy. And it didn't annoy me when she did it like normally it would. But I was like, oh, shoot, you're right. And it actually helped me calm down and enjoy the moment. And it's like just that little thing of enjoying God, it can even make a difference in our daily family life. And if those around us were enjoying God, enjoying them, like they are enjoying God, enjoying them, like not only would their lives be better, but your life would be better too. And our community would be better. And all of our futures would be better if we were all enjoying God. Now, on the surface, I was going to say if you're new, but all of you have been here before. But if you're still checking out the church maybe, or you're listening online, you've picked the right day to be here. You've picked the right time the right episode to listen to. Because on the surface of what you see here at Crosscreek, what you experience here tonight might seem like many other churches. Like when you listen to a church I'm talking to the people on the podcast, you who are in the room. But when you listen to a church podcast, you usually hear a guy just talking for a while, right? And it's not anything different than what you're hearing right now or what you guys are seeing right now. We do a lot of the same things other churches do. Like lots of churches sang those songs today, right? But what you're about to see is a sneak peek behind the scenes. We're going to see the real driving force of what we do here. What makes us, this community, unique. Not better, but different and unique than maybe other communities. See, we really believe we can be part of making our neighbors' lives better. It's why we do this whole Crosscreek thing. It's to invite our neighbors to discover, enjoy, and share the life Jesus offers together. But, I mean, who do we think we are? Like, look around the room right now. Look around. See all those people, right here? See them all? Like, just us few people in this room. We actually think we can make a difference? Like, even if all these seats were filled, that's still like 50-something people. That's not a lot when you look at Salem, right? Like, who do we think we are that we can make a difference? Why do we think we can actually do it? Because it's what God has specifically chosen us to do. And that's what I want to show you tonight, that's what God's chosen us to do. So, how I'm going to show you that is through an ancient letter written around the year 62 AD by the Apostle Peter, one of the main disciples of Jesus. He was in the inner circle of Jesus' disciples, the top 3. He was one of the first church leaders when the church first started. And he wrote a letter explaining what it means to follow Jesus. And in this letter, he explains what the church was created to be. Now, if you've kind of been coming for a while, and I know you have all these messages that I give you memorized, right? And you have all the notes framed on your wall. I know. The passage we're going to talk about, we've talked about here before. Okay? And you'll be like, I've heard this stuff. Well, there's a reason, because it's important that we don't forget this. Okay? Like if you're a parent, your kids have heard your instructions before. Right? Right? A few times. Because it's important. And so this is too important to let us forget. And so here's what the Apostle Peter says in 1 Peter 2. He says, you are royal priests, a holy nation, God's very own possession. As a result, you can show others the goodness of God, for he called you out of the darkness into his wonderful light. Once you had no identity as a people. Now you are God's people. Once you received no mercy. Now you have received God's mercy. He says, you are, meaning this is a current reality. Not someday you will be, not if you work really hard, not if you go to the right membership class, but you are this. This is what Jesus' followers are. A chosen people, royal priests, a holy nation, God's very own possession. This is where we get the idea, maybe you've heard it if you've been in church circles, the idea of the priesthood of all believers, where we don't need priests to go to God. We have this access to God because we are his chosen people. He says we're royal priests. And for the Jewish mind that Peter, grew up in, this had huge meaning. Priests were from a specific Jewish tribe, the Levites, and they were set aside to be the priests, to be the go-between between God and the people, which gave them special access to the temple, gave them special access to God, where they offered the sacrifices for the people. They did prayers on behalf of the rest of the people of Israel. Their job was to make God known to the people so that Israel as a nation could make God known to the world. And now Jesus' followers have that priestly role, is what Peter is saying. The role not to judge, not to condemn, not to argue with people, but to show others, as Peter says, the goodness of God. And that word show, we could also use it to show the goodness of God. Advertise is a good word, is a good synonym for that word there. To advertise the goodness of God. Other translations would say the excellencies of God. Like the amazing things he does, we get to advertise. We get to advertise what it means to enjoy being enjoyed by God. See, Jesus' followers exist to show the rest of the world they can enjoy the love of God. We're the advertisers, that you can actually enjoy the love of God. How do we advertise? By sharing our story. That's what Peter said. See, we share the story that life was once dark, but now there's a light inside us that comes from the Holy Spirit of God living within us. Once we didn't know mercy and forgiveness and peace, and now as a family, we do. And we read this passage. I often read this passage, and I think, okay, that's amazing. That's awesome. That's life-changing. I am chosen by God to show his excellencies. That's humbling, kind of heavy. And so, okay, I'm in. I'm going to be a good, loving neighbor. And I'll even share my story about Jesus if people ask me about it, which is super important. It's really good. But that sentiment, which is great, actually misses the main point of what Peter's saying there. Ollie, could you put the passage back up? I know it's difficult to jump back sometimes. No, okay, not you. Cool. Good job. Look, it says, you are royal priests. He called you. Once you had no identity, now you are God's people. You receive mercy. You have received God's mercy. Every you in this passage is plural. So instead of it saying you, it should say y'all. Okay? Y'all are royal priests. You guys are sweet to laugh because you've heard that at least 4 times, I think. But y'all are royal priests. Y'all had no identity as a people. Now y'all do. See, this being a Jesus follower, going to church, being part of the family of God is not just about you. It's not just about me. It's about all of us together, working together as one body. When Peter says you are a chosen people, he's talking to us as a community. See, if we really want to invite our neighbors to enjoy God, we have to do it together. If we really want to invite our neighbors to enjoy God, we have to do it together. You can put a star by that one if you're taking notes, because that's kind of like the main thing tonight. And this is why we believe Crosscreek is unique. Particularly this part of Crosscreek, our gatherings. It's why after 7 years, the leadership team is still committed to doing this. At, 2 meetings ago, I was like, do you guys still want to keep doing this? And they're like, shut up, yes. Like, what's wrong with you? Now, we might look like many other churches, right? Like I said, we do a lot of the same things. But the driving purpose behind us being together on our Sunday evenings is different. It's, I think, unique. See, we're not here just to enjoy each other. Fellowship is the churchy word for it. But that happens, and it's awesome. We're not here just to worship together, though we do that, and it's great. We're not here just to see ourselves as part of a bigger picture, something to be part of something bigger than ourselves. Though that's true. We are. When we're here, we're part of something bigger than ourselves. And we're not here just to understand how the scriptures apply to our own lives. Though I think it's really important that we do that. And we obviously make a point to do that every single week and discover how the scripture can apply to our lives every week. All those things happen here. All those things are great, but that's not the main point of why we do this. See, everything we do, especially when we gather together, is done to invite our neighbors to discover, enjoy, and share the life Jesus offers together. So listen, gathering once a week is not what it means to be a Jesus follower. That's what got a lot of us in trouble a few years ago, right? Going to church is not Christianity. The goal of following Jesus isn't to go to church and make sure more people go to church. The goal of following Jesus is to become more like Jesus, enjoy God, and invite others into that life. See, we gather once a week to help us do that, to create a community and a place that we can actually invite our neighbors into. As we've said throughout this series, everyone is someone that God is pursuing. And he has purposely put individual people in each of our paths because he is pursuing them. And he wants to use his people to show them his love and his enjoyment. And so this gathering isn't primarily for us. It's for our neighbors. And I think even sometimes bigger, it's for our friends' neighbors. See, we gather together for our friends' neighbors. We gather together for our friends' neighbors. I'm not here for me. I'm here to help create a safe community that Luke can bring his friend to. I'm here to create a safe community that Aaron can bring his friends to. That all of us can bring our friends here to discover, enjoy, and share the life Jesus offers together. So again, this gathering isn't what it means to be a Jesus follower. Going to church isn't the essence of Christianity. This, for us as Crosscreek, this is a tool to help us show others the goodness of God, to help us actually fulfill our role as the royal priests of God. And at Crosscreek, this is just one part of what we do as a community of Jesus followers. But it is our most public, our most regular, our most physical way of advertising God's goodness. And in order for it to be effective, we have to be committed to being together for each other's neighbors. See, to be a community that loves our neighbors, we first have to commit to being a community. We actually want this to be a community where people can discover God's love, then we as the people have to commit to actually being a community. And this doesn't happen, it doesn't work if we aren't committed to it, if we aren't all supporting each other together. Let me maybe help sink it in with a story. Okay, so let's picture Eric here. Hi, Eric. Eric has a friend who's going through let's pretend Eric has a friend who's going through a hard time. And Eric's praying that God shows his friend how much he loves him. Like we talked about last week, right? We're praying for our friends. We're bringing our friends to Jesus we talk to Jesus about our friends before we talk to our friends about Jesus. So Eric's been praying for his friend. His friend finds out somehow. He's like, hey, what are you doing Sunday? Oh, I'm going to church. He finds out that Eric's a Jesus follower. And his friend is interested in learning more. And so Eric, being the awesome guy he is, invites him to one of these gatherings. And in fact, Eric says, hey, come on Sunday. In fact, I'll be there waiting for you. I'll either be outside if the weather's good, or I'll be right inside the lobby waiting for you, and I'll introduce you. I'll show you around. So his friend actually shows up that Sunday. But his experience is awkward, and it's confusing. See, no one was here to set out the signs for him, and so he went into the front parking lot, and the door was locked, so he had to go around and didn't know which door to enter. When he gets to the door, there's nobody there to do a friendly greeting. So it's kind of awkward just to walk into this place. Like, did you know going to a church you've never been to is kind of like going to somebody's family reunion you haven't really been invited to? It's awkward. When his friend walks in, he's kind of ignored because everyone who's actually there is talking to people they already know. And they're kind of in their own conversation. What was cool is his friend brought his young daughter with him, because, Sunday school, they've got things for kids and stuff. And she's young, so she starts to kind of like, as, the friend's looking around, she starts to like crawl on the ground, and maybe she picks something up, puts it in her mouth, and he picks her up, and she's covered in like crumbs and hair because nobody got here before everyone else to vacuum the floor, and it's nasty. And so once he brushes his daughter off, he's like, don't do that. He's like, hey, Eric, where should I take her? And Eric says, well, normally you would take her to the kids' environment, but we didn't have anybody show up this week. And so we don't have anybody to provide a age-appropriate environment for this daughter to discover Jesus for herself. So the guy's like, okay, well, got anything to drink? And there's no coffee, there's no water, because nobody was here to set it up and do it. So there's no chance for him to even hold a little cup just to feel a little comfortable in an awkward conversation when he meets new people. You know how it's nice to sip something even when you're not thirsty when you're in an awkward conversation? Can you tell I'm an introvert? And so finally, after all that, they walk into this main room here, and there's only like 6 to 8 other people in here. And they all just either turn around and look at him, or just kind of ignore him. And as they sit down, it's completely obvious who the new person is. And everybody knows it, and the new person knows it. And so the music finally starts, and it sounds great. It's awesome. But Eric's friend feels awkward because he doesn't really know the song, so he feels awkward not singing because he doesn't know them, but like he knows if he does try singing, because if it's repetitive enough, kind of pick it up. It's awkward because everyone around him will hear him because there's not enough voices like drowning each other out. And he knows if he doesn't sing, the band can definitely see him not singing because we're taught to make eye contact when we're leading worship, and that can be awkward if you don't know the songs. And then the teaching starts. And it's mediocre. But, just kidding. But it's hard to pay attention because the room's so quiet, right? Every sniff he does, he knows somebody can hear. If he grabs one of our pens and clicks it, he knows everybody can hear that. There's no interaction, there's nobody to laugh at the corny jokes. His daughters had to stay with him, right? And now she's all getting fidgety and bored. And no, the message actually was really good. But I don't deliver it really well because I'm kind of tired because I had to do all the setup. So I'm just like, I'm worn out. Now, the message is finally done, and it comes time for communion. Now, Eric's friend doesn't really know what communion's about, right? He's new. He doesn't really know if he should partake in it. He's maybe heard of churches where, you're only allowed to do it with the membership class, so he doesn't really know. So he isn't, ready to participate in communion. But he also knows it's going to be completely obvious if he's the only one sitting there when everyone else gets up to go take communion. Service finally ends. And after service, well, there's no snacks or drinks because there wasn't anybody to set them up. And so most people just shoot out the door trying to get to dinner. And no one introduces themselves to Eric's friend. No one talks to Eric's friend. And the people who are actually still here are so busy cleaning up and putting things away that they aren't able to actually meaningfully engage with Eric's friend. Think how disheartening that would be for Eric. He's been praying for God to show his love to his friend. And his friend actually made the huge step to show up and come to a church gathering. And when he gets here, Eric has no backup. There's no real community. There's no family to help him love his friend. Eric's kind of lost his chance because it's going to be very hard to convince his friend to come back. He's like, that was awful. I don't want to be a part of that. He's not going to give it another try. Now, that's sad for Eric's friend. It's sad for Eric. But let's imagine that this friend of Eric's was actually your kid, right? Your kid was going through a rough time and desperate for someone to reach out to them, desperate for a community to encourage them, longing for the peace, the love, and the life that only Jesus can give. And the chance for them to find what they were longing for is squandered because of a bad church experience. See, everyone is someone's kid. Everyone is someone who needs to discover Jesus. This gathering isn't just for us. It's for each other's neighbors. It's for some of us, it's for each other's kids, like quite literally. And we love our neighbors by being there for each other's neighbors. So let's reverse the story, right? Imagine Eric's friend pulling up. Unsure, but hopeful. I don't know, it's kind of awkward. But the signs tell him where to go. He knows exactly where to park. Someone was there to set him up. There's a warm greeting right at the door, puts him right at ease. His child is welcomed by a kind teacher from the kids' environment, and they both kind of feel at home. The teacher kind of gets down. You know, like when you talk to a kid, you're supposed to get down on their level, and the teacher knows that and does that. People actually introduce themselves to him, and they genuinely engage with him and ask him like real questions. He doesn't feel like the odd one out when he enters the room because there's other people in the room, and he doesn't know who's new and who's not. Maybe half of them are new. He doesn't know. So he doesn't feel like the only one. He hears how God loves him, how God knows him, and how God actually knows the situation that he's in and that the hard times he's going through. And maybe he hears for the first time that God's not mad at him, but God is for him and can actually make a difference in his situation and in his life. And afterward, after all the service is over, people actually remember his name and interact with him because they stuck around. And he goes and picks up his daughter. And she says, Daddy, can we come back next week? The class was so fun and my teacher was really nice and I loved being here. Now, what if his friend came back the next week and experienced the same thing? And then the next week, and the next week, and experienced the same thing every week. And maybe, he starts discovering who Jesus is. He discovers that he can enjoy God. And he kind of shares a little bit with his brother. Like, hey, I was going through this time, I found this church, this community. They've been talking about Jesus, and I learned that God's not mad at me. And so he invites his brother and his sister-in-law to come. And they experience the same thing. And they come back and experience the same thing. And then they invite their mom. Like, the mom notices a difference at the family reunion. She's like, oh, I want to be a part of that. And so Eric's invitation in that case would become a turning point in his neighbor's life, and it would create a ripple effect that would change and influence and affect lives all over the place. Like, families would be changed. Communities, neighborhoods would be changed. And that is why we do this. That is why we do what we do and how we do it. That is why we gather. That is why I know We can be a part of creating that future we all actually want. See, loving our neighbors requires a community committed to loving each other's neighbors. If we really want to love our neighbors, we have to create a community that isn't just about me, but is about loving each other's neighbors. And think about it. How fun would that be? How fun would it be to know those types of stories are happening here every week? To know that we're praying for people and that if our friend actually wants to be invited, we'd know there's a community that would embrace them and they'd feel comfortable and welcome. How exciting would it be to be that part of that kind of community? See, we can create a community that helps us love our neighbors. We actually can. But it doesn't happen by accident. There's a few things that actually make it happen that we have to choose to do, like prayer. Prayer makes that type of community happen. Pray that our neighbors and our friends' neighbors say yes to invitations. Pray that people who are on the fence on Sundays are like, I don't know, it's a long weekend. Pray that they choose to come, choose to be part of a community. Physically being here makes that community happen. It might mean rethinking some of our schedules and priorities, if that's possible. Like, this is not a guilt trip. I know people work. I know lives happen. But rethinking some of our priorities, that, if nothing else, how do I say it? I don't want to sound like a jerk. Too late, John. But making this the priority, so hey, you want to go to this thing with me on Sunday night? No, I can't. I'm committed to a community. Do you want to go do? No, I can't. I'm committed to a community. Hey, when should we plan, Carl's birthday? Well, not Sunday night because I'm busy, right? That type of thing. It means turning our focus from ourselves and our comfort and actually reaching out to guests when we're here, making them feel comfortable and that they can find actual friends here. Because when we show up, we're not just helping ourselves. We're creating a community that welcomes and loves our neighbors. Honestly, donations make this happen. When we give, we're not just keeping these lights on. We're investing in a place where our neighbors can experience the love of God. We're investing in the future of our neighbors and our community. We're investing in other people discovering the life Jesus offers. Volunteering makes this happen. We have space to volunteer here. I don't know if you know that. But volunteering to help with kids, to help with the music and the sound and the tech, to be a greeter. Especially, hey, if you're an introvert, this is a secret. Being a greeter is the best job. Do you know why? Hey, how you doing? Move on. Hey, how you doing? Move on. You don't have to do the chit-chat because they just keep moving. It's great. Being a small group leader, helping clean and set up and put away. Those are all things that make this community actually happen. And each one of those things that I said and more plays an important role. It's not just I got to get this done. Putting out the communion, doing the snacks. It plays an important role in creating a community that loves our neighbors. And it becomes a privilege to be a part of changing someone's life. When, often I think, the preacher's the one who helps change people's lives and somebody accepts Jesus in church, that was a good sermon. No, usually it's not. The most impactful sermons I've ever given were horrible. They sucked. But God used it. And because there were others who were making the environment happen. There were people playing music that made the person comfortable. There's somebody welcoming that made them comfortable, that made them in a place where somehow they heard something, they had a comfortability to be able to hear from God. I remember, one of the reasons I learned music, the real reason I learned guitar, girls, and and so I wouldn't have to sit in the congregation and sing. I could just be on stage and not have to sing. And then I had to sing. But one other reason was because we were part of a church where lives were changed every week. And the type of church where hey, every eye closed, every head bowed, and then do you want to accept Jesus? And people would raise their hands, and people did. And I was on stage playing guitar, the cool emotional music in the background. Not to manipulate, just because it's cool. And it was amazing because I knew I played a part in that person's story. I got to be a part of their life being changed. And when we help in the kids' ministry, if their parent makes a decision or does something in here, you were a part of that because they were able to pay attention. If you poured drinks and coffee, you're part of that because you created a place where they felt comfortable. See, this isn't what I'm talking about right now with volunteering. This isn't about filling slots. It's about shaping the future of our community. And your prayers and your presence and your service and your giving, these are all ways we bring God's love to someone who might need it most. So this week, here's my challenge. It's not an invitation, it's a challenge. Ask this: what am I willing to do to create a community that loves my neighbor? What am I actually willing to do to create a community that loves my neighbor? Maybe ask, what would I be willing to do if it were my kids? If my kids' future was on the line and they needed something, what would I be willing to do for them? Because for some of us, like I said, it is our kids right now. When you're here, reach out to others. Welcome people. Engage with someone you don't already know. Make people feel comfortable. So ask, what am I willing to do to create a community that loves my neighbor? And then, ready, commit to showing up. Not just for you, but for your neighbor and for your friends' neighbors. And like I said, this is not a guilt trip. I know life happens. I know you can't always make it. It's not like we're taking attendance or anything like that. But if we all together commit to making this a community, people will be loved. People will be changed. And I'm looking at you people who are like here every week. So thank you for being here and being part of creating that community. So commit to showing up and then commit to helping out. If you can, sign up to help. That's what those cards are for in the back seat. Hospitality, welcoming people, pouring the juice for the communion, setting out the snacks. Set up. These chairs don't actually walk into the middle of the room in a sweet little horseshoe shape by themselves. Those little cards don't stay in this. They get put there every week. Clean up. They actually do have to go back against the wall, and there's vacuuming, especially when we serve popcorn. There's a lot of vacuuming. And we've actually talked about creating a prayer team that prays for people's needs, prays for the service, prays for our community. And so maybe you want to be a part of that. And again, I'm looking at a lot of people that do these things every week. So thank you. I know some of you listening who couldn't be here, and I know why you're not here. You're okay. Thank you for what you do. But yeah, there are cards in the back seat. If you're feeling a little something, take it home, pray about it, see where maybe you could help out. And we don't just throw people in. We train you. We support you. I'll even tell you how to shake hands and make sure they move along so you don't have to have a long conversation. Just kidding. Actually, no, I will. Now, when we gather together, we are creating a community for people to experience the goodness, love, and enjoyment of God. And at our last leadership meeting, we decided to set some numbers for a goal for our Christmas service. I'm not going to tell you those numbers because you would laugh at them right now, but they're insane. A goal of how many people we want to come to our Christmas service this year. And me saying that makes me feel gross because I don't like setting numbers. I like numbers being the goal of a church. I've said many times we're not here to just fill seats and get a lot of people. But we're looking for a certain number because each of those numbers represents a person. And God counts people because each one counts. You know that story of the lost sheep? You know how many other sheep he had? 99, because he knew about them. He counted them. Each one mattered to him, so much so that he knew when the one was gone, right? So we count people because God loves people, and each person matters to him. Each number represents a person, and each person has a story, and each story matters to God. It's a story he's been orchestrating from the beginning of time so they can discover his love and enjoy him now and forever. And so, yeah, we are praying for 99 people for Christmas. We thought that'd be a cool number, and God can worry about the one that's not here. Okay, I know looking around this room, that seems stupid, but it can happen. I think it should happen. I think God wants it to happen. 99 people, which means we kind of have to start inviting people now so that they can invite people and help us invite people for Christmas. And because why Christmas? Christmas is when most people are the most open to talking about God, to listening about Jesus. They know the story. They know baby Jesus, right? So they want to have something like that. That's the time they're most open. So let me ask you, who do you want to invite? Throughout this series, I've been asking you to put somebody in your head. Maybe that's them, maybe not. Who do you want to invite? What are you going to do to make sure this is a place they can discover God's love for them? Now, who does your friend sitting near you want to invite? What are you going to do to make this a place their friend will discover God's love? See, as we said last week, now is the perfect time for our neighbors to discover the life Jesus offers. So let's commit to making this gathering something more than just ourselves. See, when we commit to creating a loving community, we're committing to love our neighbor together. We actually commit to making this a community of love, and we're here to make it a community of love. We're actually committing to love our neighbor together.